Live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast. It's me, Glenn. I hope everyone's doing great as we are about to celebrate the end of 2017 and the start of a hopefully wonderful, amazing, incredible 2018. I wanted to take a moment to thank everybody so much for your support this past year. It's been really incredible and exciting to see the show start to really come into its own because more people are listening to it than ever. More people are downloading it. More people are talking about it. Man, I can't even go to an industry event anymore without people coming up to me and saying, hey, they heard the show. They really liked what we're doing over here, and to keep it up. We've had a record number of listens this month by a lot. Things are really taking off. And again, I want to thank you so much for everything you're doing. But of course, I have to ask you to do a little bit more. Share the show with your industry friends. Share it with people in your company. Let people know what we are up to over here. Also, I want to thank Duetto so much because this show is brought to you in part by Duetto. They're a great revenue strategy technology platform that's already being used by thousands of hotels to make more money and beat market rates. And you know how important that is at this time in history. As demand has been really strong and occupancy has been really strong, it's a great way to help you take it to the next level with your revenue. Make sure you check out getrevenueresults.com to hear case stories from brands that are using it, from hotels that are using it, and learn all about how they can help you improve your hospitality business. Now, I know you think you're doing great already. They can help you do better. That's Duetto. Also, check out our new site, No Vacancy News. Let me know what you think. We got great videos on there. We got great podcasts on there. And in 2018, you're going to see it to be more of a home for a lot more information supplied by other peoples because we're turning this into the No Vacancy Network. We've got great new shows that are going to start to launch. I've got a fabulous design show that I'm going to be launching personally. We've got a real estate show that's going to be coming. I'm looking to start a tech show. So lots of fun things happening in there. And also don't forget that great relationship I have with Johnson & Wales University to be providing interesting, different type of food-related content. And I'm still looking to get this hotel history podcast off the ground as well, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I've got an interview with the Peabody in the can, and I can't wait for you to hear that terrific story. We did one on the Georgian Terrace, but in 2018, I'm going to see if I could get that going a little bit more. Ideally, we'll have new podcasts for you all week throughout the week with lots of different topics, all relating to hospitality. It'll be a lot of fun. And if you love what you're hearing, hey, listen, you can support me on Patreon. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. Go to patreon.com/novacancy. Donate a little of that coin over there. Come on, people. I know you're working out right now. You're driving your car to work. You're doing whatever. But make a note to yourself. Go to patreon.com/novacancy. Give me a few bucks a month. It's not too painful. You won't even notice it's gone. For the price of a cup of coffee every day, you could support this show. All right, not even that much. Coffee's really expensive. For the price of one cup of coffee, one of your fancy schmancy coffee drinks there with all the whipped cream and the sugar and the caramel and all that kind of stuff, that's all I'm asking for. Just one. You can even buy me a drink at a conference for all I know. You know, whatever. Don't worry about it. Also, make sure you come and join me at Click, the California Lodging Investment Conference on March 8th. Use the code NOVACANCY to register. That's CLIconference.com. It's going to be pretty great. Okay, so doing a little something different here today as we are on the cusp of the new year. I don't really have anyone that was going to be a second guest on the show, and I've got a few interviews I have in the can that I really want to get out there. So I'm going to run two different interviews that I did today, both done earlier in the year. One is with Gerry Chase. He's the president and chief operating officer of Newcastle Hotels and Resorts, and we recorded this one way back at the NYU Hospitality Investment Conference. And then, of course, there's Lee Weeks. He's the chief executive officer with Coral Hospitality. And I'm not even sure when I did this one. Sometime over the summer, I think it was, maybe even early fall. Honestly, I can't remember. I'm a little worn out from the holidays. All of that Chinese food I had on Christmas Day is still working its way through my body. So it's making me a little bit silly, a little bit dumb, a little bit, foolish. Okay, so thank you so guys much for listening today, listening every single week. I can't thank you again for what an amazing year this has been, and I'm super excited about all the great things that we have coming in 2018 as we continue to revolutionize the way that you guys learn and interact within the hospitality business. Thanks so much for listening to the No Vacancy podcast. Hey, I'll see you in 2018. Thanks so much for listening. Enjoy these interviews. Rolling with, New York City, we're here. NYU Hospitality Investment Conference. Although by the time this runs, who knows? It might be time for the Lodging Conference in the fall. You never know. I got a lot of interviews that I got to get out this summer. But I am talking today to one of coolest guys around, is Mr. Gerry Chase, President and COO of Newcastle Hotels and Resorts. Gerry, I've known you forever, and you've always had a good vibe. So I'm psyched we get to sit down on the microphone today.
I look forward to it. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, you're one of those guys that are like just real and genuine, and one of those people that actually talked to me when I was younger, which I couldn't say about everyone. And unfortunately, now you haven't gotten any smarter, so you still talk to me. But
I feel the absolutely the opposite. You talk to me.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking to each other, but mostly we're talking to this audience that we have today. So hotel industry has been going great. You guys have been on a development binge. Kind of, sort of. I feel like there's regular announcements and new projects coming up for you guys. You got about 20 properties out there right now?
We do. We are recycling about 8 hotels we sold about 4 or 5 years ago. And so we're recycling that capital and reinvesting. And we have 12 deals in the pipeline, but 6 actually in the construction stage and the development stage. So we're looking forward over the next over the next 4 years. We should be able to add about 10 hotels to the portfolio, and we're also hopeful that we can look at something maybe a little bit more interesting, such as a portfolio.
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of find annoying over time is everybody seems to think that the amount of properties you have is some sort of measurement. And I spent a lot of years going to interviews. In the next 2 years, we're going to double the size of the portfolio and all that kind of BS. But they leave out that point that at some part of the relationship with the property, you can't do anything with it anymore. It's time to get rid of it. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, our business is real estate. Yeah. I mean,
right. Everyone thinks it's hotels, but it's really real estate.
Well, we sell space and time. We sell, we lease the rooms every night, and in our restaurants we try to fill the seats 3 times every meal period. Mm-hmm. So, it's really about space and time, and that's on the real estate. So the more we can sell that space and the real estate, the more valuable the real estate is.
So how do you know when you're all set with a property and it's time to move on, and if you're all good with it, why is someone else think that they could do a better job?
Well, investors have different motives. I mean, you have the coupon approach, which you want your cash flows, stabilized property, and there are properties such, the investors such as REITs or institution at some point in time, they don't necessarily need the ramp up or the institutional, or the turnaround type of thing that we're skilled in, and they're looking for more of a stabilized property. And so it's the right time usually for us to transition. Some people want to get into the brand family because we're very fortunate being a preferred developer, operator, and investor in all the major brands, but we're preferred with the Marriott, Starwood, Hilton, and we hope to be doing some Hyatts here in the very near future.
Yeah, I think that Hyatt's done a great job. Really have defined themselves over the last few years. I think Mark Hoplamezi and their current CEO has done a really terrific job of making them a player and relevant again in a lot of ways where I couldn't say they were about a decade ago.
Yeah, Hyatt has always been, kind of a market. They've kind of been a quality leader, especially in the food and beverage sector. But about 12, 13 years ago, they started looking at the select service, and I think it was about 9 years ago, they actually got into, underwriting the Suites into the Hyatt place,
which
and
was
we're very
genius move to me.
Very, very successful. And then, of course, they did the Summerfield Suites into the Hyatt House. And they were able to get distribution in a pretty rapid mode. So, it's interesting. A lot of the major brands, the big guys, have tried to roll out these brands. It takes a number of years. And their formula was buy a portfolio that kind of fit a brand product. And it was pretty ingenious of them.
Yeah, I think it was really ingenious with them. And it saved them many, many years of effort, and I think that it brought that Hyatt name to the masses, where I think before it was more of a series of, oh, this is super high-end stuff that I'd like to go to in Asia, but not in Bloomington, Illinois, or something like that, right? So you guys love Jekyll Island down there, it seems. You built this Westin down there, and now you're going to be
we can't get enough of Jekyll Island.
All right, but you're focusing on a dual-branded hotel right now in Jekyll Island. I love the idea of dual-branded hotels. I've been a big fan of these things for a very, very long time. They're coming in vogue now, but you, too, have been a fan of these things for a long time.
Well, we were early in. Actually, Syracuse Armory Square project was, according to HVS, was number 6 of dual brands in the country. And from a Residence Inn Courtyard new build, I believe we were number 1.
Wow.
We weren't the first one to open. I think White Lodging did the one in Austin before we did. But as far as putting one on the map, we were in the early stages. So, we've been looking at it for a while. It was such a success, and we were very fortunate to be working with. It was sold to the Apple REIT, and they retained us as the manager. And they're enthusiastic about dual brands. They have a number of them in their portfolio. So we just see it as a good trend. There's someone was at a meeting the other day, and one of the brands, and I can't remember which one, but they said there was about 240 in the United States, actually 240, 260 actually in the pipeline right now of dual branding.
That doesn't really surprise me, because it's one of those things that when you look back with that hindsight is 20/20 cliche, it's big, duh. Of course it's going to work. Why have one building with one brand when you could have 2 brands within it that meets 2 different groups of customers and fill it up probably at a higher percentage than if you're going at it alone with a single brand? Is that what you were thinking early on, or is that a lesson learned over time?
We were looking at in Syracuse. Nothing had been built in downtown for 50 years.
Right, and Syracuse, again, was a courtyard residence combo.
Yeah, but we looked at it and said, we can't get enough with one brand. We don't want to overbuild one product there. Especially in a market that is somewhat soft, and we decided, well, let's the land was expensive. Let's try to build a larger footprint. Let's put 2 hotels in it. It hadn't been done very often. In fact, none that we had seen, and we decided to give it a try. And we had a partner up there that knew the market pretty well, and we got it done in a very very unusual time. And when we opened up, we expected the ramp up to take 2-3 years. We actually did the 3rd year ramp up in the first year.
Wow!
And it was just we were running, and we still are, about 40. Well, we're running in excess of 150% index.
How does something like
that
happen?
That was pretty incredible. But it was the right location. It was the right brands, 2 category killers.
Right.
And of course, a great operator and
yes,
developer.
Of course. Well, the
best,
best, of course.
Yeah, they come by accident.
Right, but I couldn't think that the structure itself is what drove that kind of.
Yeah, it's a beautiful structure. It's in the right location, and when we were talking about it, was interesting. My partners up there, Richard and Dick Sykes, we had many conversations. Because it was their first venture into the hotel sector. Kept asking, well, you've been around for a while. Do you feel good about this? And I said, Mr. Sykes and Mr. Sykes, every box is checked.
Right. That means the guy has a lot of money.
I feel pretty damn good about it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We were an investor in it as well, major investors. So it wasn't. We didn't go in that lightheartedly. We had good amount of skin in the game.
Well, it seems like for a market like that, where there hadn't been a product of anything meaningful in the market for so long, to bring something like that in really shakes things up. I think that the dual brand's doing well, and now I'm hearing things about triple brands in a hotel. I'm thinking of building one with 40 brands in it, because just take the whole city over at once.
Well, go for it.
Right. I'm sure
It's one big building.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to find lots of investors over here as well. But to be fair, each hotel is just going to be 3 rooms, so I don't have to work too hard, to build them up. So you guys, you're really betting down on these things. $100 million in development on 3 of them alone.
Well, Jekyll Island we've had in the works for a while. We decided to do the same thing after Armory Square, and we had built Hampton Suites was very successful there. Kind of changed the dynamics of that particular market, because it had been really a rundown market, except for the Jekyll Club. But we partnered up with the Leon Wiener Group at the Jekyll Club to do that product. Then a couple of years ago, we opened a Westin right next to the new convention facility, and it just took off. Customers love it. It's a great location, great destination. So we created one of the few, I think, new destinations. You're hearing a lot about it on a national basis now, but it's no longer kind of one of those areas you go to a cheap motel and you can get a little beach experience. You still could probably get that.
Right.
But the hotels we have are upper upscale, getting the rates and the experience for the customers that are really, families love it, the corporate customer loves it, and our associations really are hot about it right now.
Yeah, they really are. Now, for me, these multi-branded hotels seem to me an affect of city centers and maybe near airports and that sort of thing. You're breaking into this resort market now. Why do you feel the time is right? And are you looking at it from the same point of view as just building 2 hotels and the economies of scale, or is there something that's changed that are making resorts ripe for this now?
Well, it's all the above, because you get more volume when you do 2 brands in one hotel. I mean, you could separate them and probably have them on the same site, but having the efficiencies of sharing the same pool, sharing some of the back of the house, the health club. And we're going to have a rooftop bar on this one, pretty extensive on the Residence Inn. It's actually going to be the great room for breakfast. Then it converts to this vista overlooking the Atlantic in the evening.
Yeah, that's
so it's an opportunity for us to take a very expensive piece of land, take a product and construction costs have not gone down, but we can get enough distribution on that site. With the 2 brands, and we get 2 customer experiences. So, for instance, the Suite Hotel is perfect for a destination resort market. But on the other hand, the Courtyard is very good for it as well, but also brings in that corporate customer that we have a lot of group business in the island. So I think it's a good marriage between both. We think we have the right mix of rooms. And based on our experience in Jekyll Island, it will be a huge success.
Right. I've talked about this rooftop bar thing extensively, and if you guys look back in the catalog and look for my Booze-tacular show, which is the name of the title, check that out, because we talk a lot about rooftop bars. But I feel like at this point, if you're not building a rooftop bar in some of these locations, you're really missing out on big profits. And I think it's real smart to combine it with that breakfast element as well, because we all know in the hospitality business, and you road warriors out there know this too, that having a place change over different day parts is really where the hospitality companies can make their kind of money, right?
Well, I think about the breakfast experience in that particular side of the island. The sun is rising in the morning. It's just beautiful red coming over the water, and you're going to be having breakfast in a Residence Inn with their outstanding breakfast with that same type of experience. So if you design it right, it doesn't feel like a bar at night, and we know how to do that, where you convert the bars into more of a coffee stand, and then it turns into not really a kind of an action lounge, but it's an active lounge that you can see the water and see this. It won't be a sunset, but you'll have an experience being on the beach.
Yeah, and that's what I really love. A good place to just hang out, get things done for multiple points throughout the day. So, I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you came from. I know I've known you forever, but let's go back to a little bit of Mr. Chase history over here. Why this business? I
was a poor white boy out of Minnesota. No, I grew up in Minnesota, and it was a great place to grow up. And my experience into the hotel sector was with the Marriott out in Bloomington, Minnesota, which I kind of started. Well, actually, I started at Radisson, the only Radisson, as a bellboy, but I went in with Marriott, and they gave me management development. They had 22 hotels. They gave me a lot of support, met my wife there, and it ended up being a tremendous career, and I owe a lot to having Marriott introduce me to the industry.
What is it about the hotel industry that it seems like all of these top executives start washing dishes or parking cars or doing something, and then flash forward 20, 30 years later, everyone's making these big deals at the top?
I still believe our industry has an opportunity for anybody who wants to work hard, because it's such a growth market. I mean, during the recession, we were still growing, and we've been out of the recession. We have been the fastest growing industry, probably, to my understanding.
It's true.
That's out there, and you want to. It's kind of like you want to fish where the fish are. If you want an opportunity to grow and to advance your career, you want to in an industry that's growing.
Right. And this industry has been growing. 1 out of 9 jobs in the United States can be related to the travel and hospitality industry. It's amazing how much money this industry puts out there these days. And the opportunity is really great. And I wonder why a lot of people that are just starting out are so concerned with it being, hey, I need to make a couple of bucks more an hour at this level, and think of it as their ending point as opposed to just a starting point. How do you encourage your employees to stay for the long haul and see this as a real viable, smart career where they could wind up in a position like you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have, first of all, we try to retain our properties probably longer than a lot of our colleagues out there, but our first property in Bangor, Maine, which we still have to this day, the bartender is our general manager.
Bartender's the general manager.
That started as a bartender when we opened the property 35 years ago.
I think that you should combine those jobs. Yeah, it's actually the best way to connect to guests.
Yeah, well, but we've developed a lot of people, and when we tell those stories, and it's an opportunity. So if you work hard and you're dedicated, we have an Hispanic housekeeper that's been working for us for many, many years now as a general manager at one of our boutiques. She went back to school. She was, got her HR degree, and then she was doing some different management and housekeeping. She went up the ladder and wanted to be a single mother of 2 children, and she's working and managing her personal life as well as her business life very effectively. But she was willing to pay her dues and willing to work, and she had ambition. And she's an incredible individual. And I have dozens of those type of stories that we've been able to create in our company.
You feel that maybe sometimes the younger folks get a bad rap for not having that same sort of motivation and stick-to-itiveness, or is there something there?
I think I won't tell you. I've been around for a while, but I've been around for a while. And you see that with, people, during the decades. There are people that want to work hard, want to get ahead, and want to do more. And it's exciting. And you can almost tell the first time you meet them. And there's other people who just want to get along. Yeah. And that's okay, too, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's that 10%. I always refer to it as about 10% in every category, including general managers, that have that special thing. And that special thing is they want to connect all the dots, and they want to be an expert as many of the dots as they can. And they just are engaged in this whole industry. And it's a very special type of culture when that happens.
What would you recommend to people if they want to go from that first level all the way up to the top?
I actually do a chart. I used to do I was a vice president of HR with Interstate for a while, besides other positions, because I was opening a lot of properties for them. And I had a chart that I developed, and that question always came up, how do I get ahead? And I said, well, it isn't just one thing. I have 6 circles I do with you being in the center. And you have to understand that you can do a great job and still not get ahead. You can have your boss love you and still not get ahead. But remember that you can do a great job with the guest, and you still may be held back. But start thinking of the other circles: the investor, your owner, your boss's owner. Think about the community. Think about how you engaged in the other circles, and when those all circles and your peers in business, if you all of a sudden are not think you have to work hard and having a relationship or interact or help your peers be successful, they're going to hold you back. So it's not just one thing. You have to learn early in life. The sooner you learn it, it was the magic moment for me when I realized, and I had somebody give me that lesson, and said, you're great at what you do, but you don't really always connect with what other people are trying to make them do great. And so once that moment happens, and you see that light bulb goes on, it changes almost instantaneously. You almost connect. Honestly, I've never asked for a promotion. I've never asked for a raise in my career.
Wow. That's pretty nice. Either you're just amazing at what you do, or you're doing really horrible.
I just got a title with no money.
Yeah.
That's all.
which is sad, really sad. But
that was my sad story.
Yeah, for me, it's usually about getting out of your comfort zone, I think, and trying new things. But you added a new perspective to it, making sure other people excel as well. And when you make sure other people excel, it kind of lifts the whole tide, and you'll go along with it. Yes. Yeah. All right. So, anything else that you want to talk about today, Gerry?
No, I just wanted people to know that we're deeply into this dual brand sector, yeah. And we're not only can assist in technical services and help the development process and help do the selection, but we're also a third party manager, and we have expertise in that area where a lot of others do not. And we're ready and willing to offer our services and technical service, development, and management. Great.
Thank you for doing the shameless plug without being asked. I appreciate that. But how can people find you more specifically, Gerry, as opposed to just having the name out there?
Sure. Newcastle Hotels. We're in Shelton, Connecticut. And you can call me personally. On my mobile phone. I'm going to give you my mobile phone. 203-895-2916.
That was a big mistake. I'm going to be pranking you now all the time.
Call me anytime.
All right. Thanks for being here, Gerry, and thanks for everybody for listening to the No Vacancy podcast. And I'll be back next time. That is, unless I decide to go out and build myself a dual-branded hotel. Directly across the street from his in Jekyll Island. I'll be back next week. See y'all then.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
From Eureka to San Diego and Malibu to Bakersfield, the California Lodging Investment Conference, CLIC, is one of a kind, focusing exclusively on our Golden States hotel market. CLIC was launched in 2016 by Craig Sullivan, a seasoned hospitality industry professional, to harness the knowledge of our industry leaders, support our community, and educate emerging talent. CLIC brings together lodging professionals from California and beyond for one day of learning, professional development, and networking. If you are an owner, operator, investor, broker, developer, lender, management company, brand, or professional services provider, you should plan on attending CLIC 2 on March 8th, 2018 at the Hilton Irvine Orange County Airport. We invite you to go check out the California Lodging Investment Conference website at cliconference.com for the latest details and sponsorship opportunities. Early registration now open. And as a listener of the No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman podcast, please make sure to use our exclusive discount code of No Vacancy when registering for this one-of-a-kind in California hospitality event that sold out in its very first year.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the second half of the No Vacancy podcast. I'm excited to have with me today Mr. Lee Weeks. Now, I've known Lee for a long time. I've had the fortunate opportunity to interview him on stage a couple of times. I've had the opportunity to interview him for when I was writing in print journalism, but this is the first time I'm going to have the chance to have him on the show today. Now, what I like about Lee is he's kind of taken a different sort of path where everyone is zigging, he's zigzagging through his company, Coral Hospitality. And we're going to talk a little bit today about where he's at, why his three distinctive divisions, Coral Hotels and Resorts, Coral Golf and Country Clubs, and Coral Residences and Associations are really helping to make them a market leader where others are kind of simply ignoring that category. So, Lee, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, too. I hear you're at one of your hotels up there in the Georgia mountains while we're recording this today. That sounds to me like a great place to be right now. I'm here in boring Long Island.
Well, I can tell you that it is beautiful today, and the breeze is blowing, and, I live in Naples, Florida, so
right.
The fact that I'm up here where it feels like air conditioning versus monsoon season down in Naples is a real pleasure for me.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys handle that summer, August, July kind of thing down there in Florida. I would probably, although with all of the humidity out there, I might sweat away all of the beer that I've been drinking all winter long. That might be a pretty good thing.
Well, I can tell you, I always try to plan some of my mountain trips to our properties up here for those August and September dates, that's for sure.
All right. Well, that's why I got to get a job like you. Now, for those of you listening, Lee is, of course, CEO of Coral Hospitality, a company he started in 1999, but it kind of stretches back even further than that, correct?
Yeah, it's the company was really initially founded in 1989 with my partner John Ayers. Then we got together and we created. We went from Coral Beach Hotels and Clubs to Coral Resorts and Coral Hospitality. So
tell us a little bit about how you got started on with that portion of the company, and then where we'll kind of go a little bit then into the future.
Well, my partner John with Coral Beach Hotels and Clubs was basically had a couple properties and was doing fine. And then he and I met in a couple of different committees and meetings that we were in and decided that the club business was an opportunity for us to grow the company. And at the time I was with Noble House Hotels and decided to depart Noble and to move out to my own company at that time because we were going to split the company 50-50 and take it further, and we did, and we felt that diversification, which we'll probably talk about a good bit today,
absolutely,
was the way to go between between the resorts, hotels, and then, of course, clubs at the time. And eventually, and we'll probably get into this also, that led us into managing associations and mixed-use developments and so forth. So it gave us a market diversification against all market trends and so forth. And then it also gave us an opportunity just simply to have more business and to grow the company.
Right. Yeah, that to me sounds really interesting. Most of the people I speak to, with very few exceptions, seems to be extremely focused on the hospitality industry proper, just hotels. And when they talk diversification in their portfolio, they mean select service hotels and select service hotels in another location, not what you're talking about. So it's interesting that you started early on with this particular strategy. So why was the club business interesting to you, and how did you bring it to these other areas as well?
Well, initially, I actually started out in the club business when I first started my career. I started managing private tennis clubs, right, and then moved into country clubs. And then I moved into resorts in Hawaii with Hyatt hotels. And because I had that background and understanding that, when you have a large resort, it could be mixed use, and certainly a lot of them have golf courses and so forth. We thought it was a natural, while it's diversified, that you also might find a mixed-use development that has all three: associations, clubs, and resorts. And being an expert, and as a company, being an expert in those areas was going to help and benefit us to indeed get properties like the ones we have now.
Yeah, and they do have a lot of wonderful properties. You folks have golf resorts. You have condominium properties. Even you've got state park and lodges kind of facilities, as well as the golf and tennis clubs and all of that. So that's a really interesting thing. I feel like you've got to wear a lot of different hats and kind of understand a lot of different market nuances in order to be successful in each of those things. How do you manage to be an expert in each of these very diverse different categories?
Well, along with the background that I had, having worked and managed country clubs, and then having managed and worked in resorts, and now being an older citizen, I'll put it that way. I've had the opportunity to kind of do it from the ground up, and as a result of that, that really helps you understand the business. And of course, we have a great team, and our team has been assembled from different paths also. The club area, and as well as the resort and the association business. So in reality, when you get right down to it, it all comes back to hospitality, taking care of the customer, making sure things go well at a property and maintaining that property. And then obviously making sure that you've got a keen eye toward the P&L and making sure you're profitable in what you do. And that actually led us into owning hotels, resorts, and clubs. You don't own an association. You are pretty much dictated by the board as to what happens with those normally. Mm-hmm. But, we're not just management. We also own.
Right. Yes, of course you do. That seems to be a pretty important formula these days. And I see that a lot more from companies. Even the ones that weren't traditionally partial owners are almost being told they have to put in some money if they want to manage a particular property. It's a very big change in the way that the fundamentals of our business operates, I believe. Are you seeing the same kind of thing?
Absolutely. Generally, an owner would like for the management group to have some skin in the game. Mm-hmm. And it comes in two different forms. It can come in sliver equity. Yep. To be part of it, or it can come in key money. Those are handled a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, it's still money you need to have and be able to put out to make a potential management contract happen. And of course, hopefully, with the growth of the asset itself from a financial standpoint, as an example, with our Hollywood property with Margaritaville, it's been a good investment for us as well, owning a sliver equity in that property along with Starwood Capital and Margaritaville.
Right. Well, I'm very glad that you brought up that property. I was going to bring that one up later. I've been an unabashed fan of what the Margaritaville folks have been doing out there, because I really think that the hotel industry, as much as they pretend to say that hotels are quote unquote lifestyle hotels, brands like Margaritaville, brands like Hard Rock, and a few others out there, I think, really understand what it is to connect with a very specific type of customer and then deliver a satisfying experience that really excels what they're looking for. How did you get involved in that project, and what is it about it that you really find attractive?
Well, it was a ground-up development, and it was back in the time when the world had fallen apart, basically 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And it was not easy to make happen. So developer Lon Tabachnik with the Legetta Group had been working with architects to find to actually begin to create a design for this property. And the architects explained to him that they had worked with me in other projects, notably the Sand Pearl Resort in Clearwater Beach. And they suggested that we had great hotel experience and were good to work with. And as a result of that, Lon gave me a call and asked if I'd be interested in the project. He was right across Alligator Alley from me, since we're located in Naples, and he's basically in Hollywood.
Right.
So I went over to see the project, and we were one of the early investors to do that project. And then from there, we kind of took the helm with the architects and created another property that we thought flowed very well for both group and transient customers, as well as had all the lifestyle things that you were just mentioning with the brand Margaritaville. Margaritaville also then came on just about the same time we did, and it was a joint effort between the city of city of Hollywood, and then a private entity like ourselves. Eventually, because we had already worked with Starwood Capital in the project down in Miami, which was formerly known as the Gansevoort, became the Perry while we managed it for Credit Suisse, and then eventually was purchased by Starwood Capital. We worked with them for a couple of years with that project, and we were, along with our relationship and then the relationship that Margaritaville had with Starwood Capital, we got them to come on as the major capital partner with us to finish and to do the project. And those difficult years that we all remember so well.
Yeah, still, I think people are still waking up with, night sweats from those particular few years. But fortunately, now the industry has kind of gone completely the reverse. We're at the top of the market, and we'll get into what my predictions are, where we're headed a little later in this conversation. But there's some fundamental changes that are happening right now in the marketplace. We're seeing this big influx of technology into hospitality, and one of the biggest concerns that I have going in the future is having that right balance between technology and personal interactions that actually help enhance the guest experience, rather than turn it into something that's just automated and turning it into something that sends a hospitality product towards being a fungible, everything being the same type of a product. How are you approaching this very complicated and tricky issue?
It really is, and it's a balance between the young folks who would a lot of times prefer not to have to deal with anybody and be able to use their phone and go straight to their room and use that as the key to open their room and have already pre-checked in. And then you've got the mid to older folks that still enjoy and appreciate the one-on-one relationships that you create with the staff. So it's a balance that you have to meet. My way of looking at it is return on investment and the convenience for the guest. Those are the two factors that I use for technology. So let's take Wi-Fi for example. At first it was, everybody bragged we had Wi-Fi. Well, now it's expected that you have Wi-Fi. So technology that becomes something that everybody has at home or at the office and is basically expected, I call those the must-haves, because without it, they're going to be missing. It's just like when you didn't have TVs, et cetera, way back in the day.
Right. So let me go on my Wi-Fi rant for just 1 second here. If you folks out there listening still don't understand that Wi-Fi is a utility as much as water and electricity, you're really being foolish. It's absolutely critical to understand that this is a must-have for guests, and if you're charging exorbitant amounts of money, or if it's subpar in speed, you're going to lose the customer right there before you even have a chance to make an emotional connection with them in any other way. Sorry, Lee, had to get that out.
No, well, you're absolutely right. There are the industry is actually evolving to the point where not only do you need to have good, strong Wi-Fi, but people are expecting to be able to stream and everything.
Absolutely.
We're in the phase right now where we went from, okay, we have Wi-Fi and there's a charge for it, to now there's Wi-Fi and it's part of the resort stay, and we're only charging for a higher bandwidth, if you would, of Wi-Fi so that you can stream and do things. To eventually it's going to be everybody needs to have as much Wi-Fi as you can possibly provide for them, and they're not going to want to pay for anything additional with it. And it's just an evolution that's taking place, and that kind of speaks to the whole technology portion of the conversation that we're having, which is that some things just become expected. Eventually, keyless entry doors, et cetera, will be absolutely expected. And, we're just going to evolve into those things because eventually they're going to also be in your homes, just like Wi-Fi is now.
Right. Yeah, I actually want to get one of those keyless entry things, too. My kids are going back and forth to school every day, and we're not necessarily home all the time. And I don't trust them to not lose a key because, I think that's going to be a big problem. And I don't think hiding the key in the backyard under that fake rock is going to do it anymore. So I think that would be a great technology for home. But it's got to be tricky for you guys out there to continue to integrate new technologies in your hospitality products, especially your resort type of a product that's a little bit more than home. It's almost like a bottomless pit of money where you can never seem to keep ahead of the trends for too long. So you've got to kind of figure out, like you were alluding to earlier, what's the right technology for the guests, what do they really want, and what makes sense from that return on investment standpoint, and bring it all together in something that's clear and coherent for the owners and operators of the properties, right?
Yes, and there's another aspect of that, and that is retrofitting properties with this technology. When it comes to that, you really have to look at the return on the investment for what you're charging, and then, of course, how much of a convenience is it really for your guests, and what does the future say about that technology? So there's a number of aspects of this that you have to look at. But retrofitting is much more difficult with some of this stuff than just a new build. When you're doing a new build, you literally have to click all the boxes of what is current, what do we see in the future, what do we know we need to do now to prevent having a big problem in retrofitting later on. So it's a dynamic look at the future when you're deciding to build a new property,
right? And
then what technology is going to go into that property.
Yeah, man, and I gotta say, it's that's also you make it seem so easy, but it's pretty darn complex. I remember in the early 2000s when the internet really started to take off and become something meaningful in people's lives. We were talking about how to retrofit all these properties, and all of these folks had to put in all of this expensive wiring and do all of these projects. And then as soon as they finished that product, like literally the next day, Wi-Fi became the way to do things. So you really need to have a time machine sometimes, it seems, in order to figure out what to put into your property to make it future-proof-ish.
No, you really do. And, it's like the telephone in the guest rooms. You think you don't need it, and then you wonder how it's going to be replaced. And everybody now carries their own cell phone.
Right.
But when they're calling the front desk, or if they need to call in a room service order and all of that, you have to think through the technologies. Is it going to be done through the television? Is it going to be done through streaming some way? Is it going to be done through an app that you put onto their phone? I mean, there's 15 different ways to handle everything that's coming up. And, some of them are the best ways, and some of them just make more sense from a financial standpoint.
Right. And finding that sweet spot in the middle is the trick. But speaking of sweet spot in the middle, I'm going to make a very elegant segue here, Lee. So be prepared for that. You have a very diverse portfolio, as we were discussing before, from, larger resorts to state park lodges. So how do you continually build a successful portfolio that plays in all of these different areas and really is able to accentuate and maximize your outflow of cash and, of course, the influx of profitability?
Well, originally when we first started the company and we were younger, it was all about management contracts and finding the right property. And as a matter of fact, with the exception of the Margaritaville brand, we have mostly been an independent contractor, meaning managing properties that are independent of brands.
That's true. Let me just
And we
throw
find
out a couple of names, for
Yeah.
example, like the Arrowhead Golf Resort, Brasstown Valley Resort, Casa y Bell Resort on Sanibel Island. Love that place, by the way. A lot of independent brands, aside from that Margaritaville. You're absolutely right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So we like the Savoy Hotel in South Beach. We understand the market and how to set up reservations, how to set up marketing, all the ways to, basically be able to survive and not be branded. And with the advent of, once again, technology and the internet, it certainly made that a lot easier. Previously, before the internet, people wanted to go to a property where they knew what they could expect. So the brands, a Marriott or a Hyatt or whatever, you knew exactly what you were going to get. You knew what the box looked like. You knew what the service was going to be. But now with the internet, you can literally go look at probably where you're going to make your reservation. Also, you see the property, you see the last 10 comments from the guests, you see the pictures. You no longer need that brand to absolutely tell you what you're going to expect, because it's right there in front of you on the website and on the TripAdvisors and things like that have guest comments from the previous guests that stayed there. So it became a lot easier to manage non-branded properties, but you still need to know all the technologies, to be able to hook up your reservation system and make sure that all your categories and so forth are there and available for guests to book so that you don't lose. And then, of course, not having to pay for the brands and their fees. Then you look at is this a value add not being branded? Where are you in the marketplace? What is your competition? And banks and so forth used to force you to have brands, especially when they were going to lend you the money, or lending institutions would force you to have a brand. So then you started looking at soft brands like Preferred or some of the other things. Now you're able with a track record for Coral, you're able to show that even with non-branded properties, you've been very successful. In most categories, we lead the market with our rates and our occupancy. So it comes back to the management group as opposed to just a brand. So that's basically how we've attacked that in the past. And to your point about once again being diversified, we feel that we're now looking, as opposed to just management contracts, we're looking at investments. With most of our golf courses, not the ones that are owned by the state, and some that are private clubs, but we own a number of golf courses and we own a number of private clubs, and we look at strictly from the investment, not so much about the management. The management is a byproduct, and that certainly helps. But we look at probably 100 golf courses before we decide to buy one. And as a result of that, that's the investment is guiding our direction and what we're going to manage.
Interesting. Why do you still like golf courses? That's an interesting thing to me, because I keep hearing stories, and forgive me if I'm incorrect, but it seems like golf is not as central to people's lifestyles as it used to be. It seems to be a lot of younger people aren't getting inculcated into the wonderful sport, and it's got to make things a little bit more challenging. Or maybe I'm completely wrong and it's more popular than ever. How is the golf market out there?
No, I believe what you're stating is correct, and once again, that's why you need to look at a lot of properties. We don't just go buy any golf course.
That's why the one of 100.
Any golf course we manage. Right, 1 in 100. So we take a look at the surrounding area in South Florida with the retirees and so forth coming down, and the age group with the baby boomers and so forth still retiring right now, and really for the next 4 or 5, maybe 10 years, we still feel the market's very strong. It is more difficult now to get, and I'm using Naples as an example, $100,000 initiation. I think a lot of those days are gone. There are very few and far between that are doing that. But the annual membership and driving revenue, and then placing some semi-private play from the resorts and so forth into the clubs.
Right.
We have actually found them to be most lucrative, and we've done very well with our properties. And we're trying to build up a portfolio of probably about 15 to 20 privately held courses throughout South Florida and the East Coast that we feel, would eventually be a good full sale to a REIT or some of the other golf companies that are looking to accumulate successful properties.
Hey, and I would say worst case scenario, if you've got all these great places in South Florida, if people suddenly just stop playing golf, you've got a lot of great land that you could develop into other amazing products as well, I would think, too. But I think that's just kind of really far off. Mm-hmm.
But
could you say it one more time? You broke up on me a little bit. Could you please repeat that again?
I'm sorry. I said that's probably a backup position,
yes.
But you also have to be concerned yourself with the zoning of those communities and those counties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Can't argue with that, Lee. So I find that's really interesting stuff. But one of the things I'm most concerned about is we've been riding high in this market for a number of years now. And, people were saying that through 2017, everything's going to be great and wonderful. I'm starting to see some holes in the market. I'm starting to see a softening of everything. I think it's time that we need to arm ourselves about the strategies for a potential downward market. You know why? Because now is when people get fat and lazy, Lee. How do you prevent your company from getting fat and lazy and, not always being out there in terms of spending, wanting to keep those costs reined in, wanting to make sure people have their eyes on the prize that things are eventually going to go south?
Well, let's start off with, once again, being diversified.
Yeah.
When the world fell apart previously for us, having private golf clubs and management contracts that were associated with outside of the typical hotel resort market, it helped our company sustain itself. And a number of companies dropped off the map during that time. We were fortunate that we didn't have to.
Right.
With regard to the actual properties and the general managers themselves, quite frankly, the good old days of where everyone thought about a lot of being fat and spending, it really is not happening so much anymore. The profit and loss statements are scrutinized fairly closely. I know they are with our company, and speaking with other CEOs and so forth, there are many companies that talk about downsizing before they even need to downsize. I think you're going to hear some things from what I understand coming up here soon, that some of the larger companies are doing that. So I think we all got burned back in 2008, 2009, and to this point, I don't think there is a lot of fat in many. I mean, there are exceptions to it, but I don't think there's a whole lot of fat in those P&Ls anymore. And the question is, if you're already running lean, where do you go when you're already running lean?
That's a big issue, Lee, because it's fun to be able to find those little things to get those quick and easy, simple solutions. But if you're already a pro, it's got to be a lot more challenging for you.
It is. It's very hard when you're, as they say, managing, very tight, and you're suddenly the market changes or things happen that you need to cut back. The question is, where do you cut back? And that's not an easy decision. And quite frankly, it comes down to every property individually is what you have to look at. You can't just, as an overall company, say this is going to go away. Usually, because there's not that fat that's sitting up at the top. You're going to have to look at every single property and dissect it even further than you already do, and that's not easy. It's a difficult time when that happens.
How do you make sure that you're in the right frame of mind and then you're open to change and making these things? I think a lot of times we trick ourselves, just the basic human psychology, into thinking that everything's fine, everything is great, when all of the signs are in front of us that it's not.
I think the companies that actually own a number of their own properties are better at that than the companies that are just straight management companies. Because you're not just looking as a management company. You're looking at the bottom line as an owner, and that keeps you, when you're doing it for your own properties, then you're also doing it for your clients' properties, probably doing a better job. you're more focused on that bottom line when you own some of the property yourself. I think that helps a lot.
Right. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Any other advice that you would give hoteliers out there?
I see interest rates actually staying low for a while, so hopefully that's going to help the economy. And if they were to be able to get the tax reductions through Congress, and I think that will also help the market. And I'm not so sure that if that happened, that the naysayers would be so strong about seeing the market change anytime soon.
Right.
From what I'm seeing, it may change. It always does, but I don't see it in the next couple of years. I do know that some of the big players are divesting themselves of some of their assets and are trying to do that anyway. And maybe they're smarter than I am, but I see at least it's a couple, 2 or 3 years away.
Cool. Well, that's what I like to hear. Keep it in the future, especially since I'm a small business owner and I want to keep my business going too. So if we're all happy and fat, then hey, we're all happy and fat. That's pretty good. Now, before we wind up, Lee, you got the golf thing, you got the Margaritaville thing. I'm thinking your next project should be Margaritaville mini golf courses, where it's all themed to it. It's a real, little easy putt-putt, and then you get land shark drinks or margaritas at every single hole, whoever wins, to the end. You heard it here first. If you take the idea, just, let me play for free sometime, all right, would you?
Sounds good to me. Sounds like you're talking a little bit about Topgolf too, the way they do their business. But I would mention, since you brought that up, Margaritaville is doing 55 years and older communities now, and we're involved with some of those and helping them design and create some of the public areas of those, and the kitchens and the restaurants and so forth, for that type of lifestyle. So it kind of goes along with what you were just suggesting.
Yeah, it sure does. And I would love for all of you guys to check out. I did a show with the Chief Marketing Officer, Tamara Baldanza Decker. I will put up a link to that show in the show notes. I highly suggest you check it out. I find them to be very fascinating and interesting, almost as fascinating as I've enjoyed this conversation with you today, Lee. Any final words?
No, but I do appreciate your time, and I hope it was beneficial to anyone that was listening.
Great. I'm sure it was, and if you want to send any comments, just drop them to me at Twitter or on Instagram at Traveling Glenn, or send me a note at glenn@rouse.media. So I want to thank you guys all for listening. I had a great time talking to Lee today, and I had a great time bringing some news and information to you again on another fun episode of the No Vacancy podcast, and I will be back next week. That is, unless I decide to run away and start creating Margaritaville mini golf courses. See you guys all next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.